Right, folks, I have with me today Mr. Glen Niles, President of the Down Syndrome Family Network. How are you going, sir?
I'm good. I'm glad to be here, man. I don't know if I could fill the shoes of the people who came here before.
You're here to fill them shoes. Yeah. I don't tell people that I know Glenn for a long time, just knowing you in and out and around the gym. But I don't tell you that I have evidence that I've been in the gym for a long time. But the images people see now, you versus me. I don't know what I was doing in the gym versus what you was doing in the gym. But you've been around the hooded trainer, right? You've been around for a long time.
Yeah, boy, too long. I don't want to let everybody know my age.
We go do some guessing over the course of this episode. You put it together. But that's something I've been seeing you doing for Long Circular Gym for some time now. And it's one of the people who you'll see have a little bit of mysteriousness about you. See you around the gym. You don't talk much. You're dealing with your clients, very, very focused on them. So I was surprised the other day you came and you tell me, it's like, how do you decide who come in next on the podcast? It's a question I'm starting to get more and more. And my answer to you was, well, national impact. And then you told me what you do and so on. And I remember seeing you in papers one day. I remember seeing, that was the first time I said, okay, there's ways and there's ways to. So I had to ask you, like, you getting into the network or starting the network, what was the impetus for it? How did you get into that?
All right, well, starting our network really was because of my son.
Right.
My son was born with Down syndrome. I didn't know anything about Down syndrome. We were a young couple, and I remember distinctly when my wife was pregnant and we went by the doctor. We reading this book, What to Expect When You Expect It.
Of course, all of us were there, right?
So we reading this and they talk about donor amniocentesis. Well, my son is 26 years, so this way back in time. People now, they're not even doing that because they have a blood test for the first trimester and you'll know what's going on. So we asked the doctor, where's this amniocentesis? What's that about? He said, that's to check the amniotic fluid and see if the child has Down syndrome. But you don't have to worry about that, you're young.
This is what the doctor tell you?
Yeah, that's what he said. So it's like, oh, okay, right, you don't have to worry about that. So you're doing everything, right exercises, taking the necessary vitamins, everything, perfect diet. And then when my son was born, I was in the room, so between the pain and my wife crushing my hand, I watching her say, but this baby looking different.
So something
right. When he was born, I say, there's something wrong, right? I didn't tell her anything, but that just weighed on my mind. Back then I had no cell phone, so when I went home, I couldn't even sleep properly. Next morning, she called and she said that the doctor wanted to talk to us. So I don't know, the doctor going to tell us something about the baby because that baby just wasn't looking right.
Yeah. Can this put us in general?
This was in San Fernando.
Oh, okay.
Southern Medical at the time. So I went down and he said that the baby has Down syndrome. So I tripped. I wasn't talking. The whole room just went red. And I just watching this man, I could have just run up his chest and continue running all over him, literally. Because I remember we asked him if we had to do the test.
Yeah, of course.
And he said no. So he really apologized and all kind of thing. I wasn't talking. He asked him my questions. I was just looking at him. And my wife just trying to calm me down, I didn't talk again for the rest of that interview with him,
Yeah.
And I said, well, I was saying, I hope my son healthy. 10 fingers, 10 toes, the normal things that they'll say. I said, I didn't factor in Down syndrome or any other form of disability, right? So that's how it is. And then I start thinking about, okay, well what is this Down syndrome thing? And what has caused it, right? Because, I've seen people with Down syndrome before, and the people I've seen wasn't really doing anything. I see they're overweight, they're sticking out their tongue, they're making noises, they can't really talk, speak properly or anything. So, all of that on my mind, I say, wait, now, this is what my son, this is what's going to happen to my son.
So now that you're experiencing it is when you're really learning about what it is. Or
yes, now I'm trying to find out what it is. Google became a friend, and then I started to align myself with other organizations. But back then, the next shocker was in 2 days when you had to do just a checkup by a pediatrician, right? And the pediatrician listened to his heart pause. He went back to his heart again. He checked everything else. He gone back to his heart again. So I watching him out, came out, well, what it is? Well, in one moment, and he checking, and my blood pressure started to raise again one time because I was like, oh, come on, man, he done born with Down syndrome. What next? Mm-hmm. So I just jump up, the back of my legs said the chair fly across the room, and I hold on to his desk, and I kind of push the desk towards him. I tell you, I was so vexed. I said, just tell us, waiters. Yeah. Just tell us, right? And then he said, he had an echo. So it sounded like if he have a couple holes in his heart, I'm like, born with Down syndrome. When I started to tell myself, okay, well, he'll be a Special Olympian, but now he have holes in his heart. So he's not going to live. So he passed on to a pediatric cardiologist, Dr. Diane Alexander. And we went to see her. She did all the tests to confirm what he was saying. And that is when I went into a real dark place. Right? Yeah. Like, seriously, I was like, but what does I do?
And he's still a newborn at this point, right?
Yeah, he's still a newborn. What does I do?
Yeah.
To deserve this? Well, all the time we waiting, to get our first child after marriage, and now he born and he had Down syndrome plus he have, congenital heart disease. Started thinking about it. I started watching my father hard. What does you do back then? I started studying everything that I do. The always saying sins of the father. All kind of thing with my mind,
like
because
father
I don't know
father.
what causing it.
Of course. And I guess at that point in time, you do have a lot of information about it. We're not in a society where we talk about things openly as that. It's a secret.
And especially back then. Mm-hmm. Back then, it was still in the real mode of people hiding children with disabilities.
Right.
They're not really bringing them out because they're ashamed. They don't know how society will look at them and all of that. So that was fully, it's still like that now, but back then it was fully entrenched.
Of course.
So, well, the next step was he had to have open heart surgery or he would have died. Obviously, we don't have the money for that. Mm-hmm. And, in talking to Dr. Alexander, they said our team of doctors has come down. Right. Back then, as I said, this like 26 years ago. But the waiting list is very long. So, the picture started looking dimmer to me. We don't have the money, the waiting list long. Well, like my son will die. So I was talking to a friend about it, and she attended Howard University. She's dead now, God rest her soul. And Michelle Cato. And she told me that she'll contact some of her peers because she's a physiotherapist. So, other people in her cohort who have been doctors, nurses, things. She'll contact some of them and find out. And when she contacted them, they told her about Rotary International had a Gift of Life program. And they take on cases like this. I was like, okay, I got the information for them. And we contacted them. And they responded. They asked for all his test results. So, we went to Dr. Alexander and prepared all the results back then, put it on a VHS tape.
Yeah, that's the era.
Yeah, put it on a VHS tape, no DVD or Blu-ray or
flash drive.
Or disc, flash drive, you know what I mean? And we sent it by registered mail up to them. And they took the case.
Right.
So they had to wait until he was 5 months old, so he'd be strong enough to go under that general anesthesia. So, from the time he was born, he was actually very robust.
Oh.
But in that 5 months, man, almost shrink away to nothing.
I could imagine. That must have been a rough 5 months for you all too. Yeah, boy. Because you're just praying for the date to come.
Exactly, and just watching him getting smaller and smaller, But thank God the operation was a success. I had to say thank you to those Rotarians, man. They don't know me. From this small island down in the Caribbean. And one of them kept my wife and son in their home for months prior to the surgery and after. Mm-hmm. And another one paid for everything. So we made sure after we went back up on vacation and went and visited them to show them, hey, this is the man, listen.
They must be too happy to see what he's become.
You understand? Mm-hmm. Yeah, so
that was his
after
start.
that, that was his start. Mm-hmm. But then I'm still trying to learn about this thing. Well, one thing I know is that it wasn't my fault. Because, I was thinking it's my fault.
Yeah, I want to talk about that some more because the thing is, like, when you find out you're going to, and this is your first child,
Yeah.
when you find out you're going to be a father, as men, you have these dreams of being the next Ronaldo, the next Messi. I've always known you to be a very fit man. So I would imagine that you're thinking the same things. You want him to be bright, you want him to be sporty and all that. You have all that going in all the way through the pregnancy with you, yes?
All of that. But listen, my father didn't really put me into sport, put me into any sport at all, any kind of fitness. So I was a wimp growing up. I was bullied in school. Yeah, I couldn't fight. I couldn't do anything, literally. So I was like a little outcast in school. When I see my schoolmates now, like from primary school, well, secondary school, like 50 years after, they can't believe I look how I look now. Oh, remember this skinny little black fella, and looking at me now, I'm taller than them, I'm bigger than a lot of them, and I'm fitter than a lot of them, But back then, yeah, I wasn't into any sport. So, I was telling myself, my son, everything will be different for him. I'm going to let him try everything, see which one he likes, things like that. So I had real plans.
Of course.
But the universe, God had their own plans.
Yeah. And finding out that news, because I was reading that they have the prenatal test to find out. Your doctor talked you out, so that he basically basing it on the fact that you fit, which have nothing to do with nothing.
Which has absolutely nothing. He said that we were young. The average age of a woman giving birth to a child with Down syndrome is 21. And that's because more women at that age give birth to children. They said the risk increases when the person is older. But that is not a factor either, because I personally know 3 friends who had children at 45 and they were born with no issues whatsoever. No Down syndrome, no autism, no cerebral palsy, nothing. Their children are adults now and healthy. So it just happens.
Yeah.
Right? Harvard Medical School, I remember years ago, they were spending millions trying to figure out what causes this 21st chromosome to split. Why? And I used to be thinking, well, along with a lot of other people, that why are spending millions trying to figure out how to stop Down syndrome instead of using our same millions to help take care of the people born with Down syndrome?
Yeah, because your reality is now that we're here.
Yeah, you're here already. So what are you going to do? You can't call them like what they used to do in some European countries.
Of course.
Back in the day, when I hear some kind of horror stories where they actually used to, they would not, if they have, like my son, they have a heart disease, they would not give them the surgery. Because as far as they're concerned, they're not going to give any meaningful contribution to society. So they basically used to let them live for however long they live.
Yeah, abandoned, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah, almost.
If they live, well, fine. If they don't, well, there would not have been any use to us anyway. That's their thinking, But now that has changed. So if you Google some sites, you'll still see them saying the average age of a person born with Down syndrome is 25. And that's real archaic.
Right.
And if you Google the sites of the organizations that are advocating for, human rights of persons with disabilities, you'll see the average age is 60. So they're outliving their parents. No.
I see.
So a whole different change. And I feel that change is due to the fact that they're getting the medical attention.
Right.
Because a lot of countries have legislation that will protect them.
Of course.
And instead of just leaving them as before. So in me starting to learn all of this, I came upon the National Down Syndrome Congress, based in the U.S. in Atlanta, the National Down Syndrome Society that's based in New York, Down Syndrome International in the UK, Canada Down Syndrome Society. So I started to follow those sites because they had a lot more information on it. I mean, if a parent in Trinidad, child is born with Down syndrome, and they write to the National Down Syndrome Society in New York, they're sending them a package. All the information you need to know about your newborn.
Yeah.
Imagine that. They're sending them a package here to Trinidad for free.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. You know, so
I thought you meant it was in the US. So if you write
no,
it, I see.
yeah,
I see.
you write to them, they send in a package. You know, so the National Down Syndrome Congress, they have an annual conference. You know, so I say, I want to attend this conference. You know, so I attended the conference, and that's what changed my entire life.
Mm-hmm.
Literally,
Yeah.
that was the catalyst.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I remember it was in Boston. I think it was either 2008, 2007. And when I walk into the hotel, it's a huge hotel. I didn't know that conference was so big. You know, come from Trinidad, you think, yeah, in conference,
Yeah,
you
it
think
must be a
about,
little thing.
about 300 people. It was like about 3,000 people. Right?
Yeah.
And people from all over the US and even internationals, right? But what hit me is when I stand up in the lobby, I never see so many people with Down syndrome in my life. That's one.
Mm-hmm.
Two, I'm watching parents walking with their kids or young adults, and these young adults, they're not holding their hands or anything. They're walking on their own. I'm watching their dress, their manner, the different personalities. I'm like, but they're looking like any other average young teenager or young adult.
Yeah, not exactly the experience in Trinidad, right?
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I was looking to see sort of overweight people walking. They can't walk properly. Parents had to hold their hands,
Mm-hmm.
you know, well into until they get
Adulthood.
older, until they die.
Mm-hmm.
And that wasn't what I was seeing. I watched men with long hair, earring in theirs. Well, back then was the baggy pants, so you
Of
know,
course.
the pants look like it made from cloth. They could probably make about 3 pairs of pants, you know, hanging off the same way.
Yeah.
The shirts real big, and they have on a baseball cap turned backwards or forward. But then you'll see the others who dressed in polo shirt and jeans tucked into their pants with their belt. You know, so you're seeing all the mix. Some of the girls have on business suits, some of them in mini skirt with boots. And these are girls with
It's
Down
just
syndrome.
society. You see a reflection.
Yeah, so I was in shock.
Right.
You know, coming from Trinidad and looking at this, and then watch them, they go, they check in, and the parents hand them the keys, the room keys, and say, don't forget we're meeting at so-and-so time for dinner.
So you're on your own, like independent.
I'm like, well, but they're going, where they're going? I follow a group of them outside to see where they're going, because I tell you,
it's just not the experience we have here.
It is not. So for me, that was mind-blowing.
How old your son is at this time when you went there?
Then, how old is he? Born in 1998. You got that maths?
I
took him, yeah, so that was like 2007.
Yes, he could be about 9.
Yeah. So I took him with me, and, you know, and I'm just watching him and watching these people. So, you know, my whole vision of the future, of his future, changed.
Of course.
In that instant. Because I'm like, this, all of them are Down syndrome. He has Down syndrome. There's no different kind of Down syndrome.
Yeah.
So, he could be just like them.
Of course.
And that's why I start thinking, you know, and then in going to the sessions and speaking to the lecturers, the presenters, and the after, and hearing all the things that we could do as parents. I think the most important thing is early intervention.
Yeah, I guess.
Don't wait.
Right.
That, you know, they say the first 5 years is the formative years. That's why we could remember every nursery rhyme. But if you ask me about Pythagoras theorem, I
in some trouble.
That. Yeah.
You should teach you that at 4 or 5 years old.
You understand?
But as a parent, the thing is, like, I gotta ask you, what gives you that drive and impetus? Because at the risk of sounding completely ignorant, I can't imagine getting that news in the room. I appreciate you talking about your reaction to it, but I imagine that I would be feeling, well, blame, regret. I would have studied all the things I do woman in my life, and I say, boy, this is my punishment for this thing now. I would be studying the shame that, you know, how do I tell family and tell people? Because Trinidad is a funny place when it comes to people and everybody expecting good news and people calling you. And now you had to tell that story over and over and over with family that calling and them kind of things. So you would have gone through all those things like that cycle of emotion.
Yeah, I did. And you know what carried me through? Anger.
Yeah. Bad mind.
No, not bad mind. Not just anger. Just pure anger. I was angry at everybody. I was angry and jealous of the people who had the so-called perfect child. You know, with no disabilities. And when they're not giving that child all that they could, I was even more angry with them. So some of my friends, they wouldn't even know why I kind of ostracized them, but it's because of that. I'm like, look at your child, man.
You don't know easy
And
habits.
Exactly, and you not putting in the effort, you not being the father that you should be to that child or the mother that you should be to that child. And they would never understand if I tried to explain it to them because they didn't have a child like Tyrese. And so it's that anger that pushed me, that anger that make me invest and go on that conference and meet people and meet parents and get their stories and then come back and say, nah, because I'm always kind of solutions oriented. You tell me a problem, I start to wrap my mind around it and how we could fix this.
Right.
I don't focus on the problem at all. I focus how we could fix this, the solution. And I use that even as a coach now. People come up with all kind of excuses why they're not fit, why they're not going to the gym. And find them, I'll keep shooting down all the excuses until they realize, I could do better. So it's the same thing. But the thing is, I couldn't fix my son. So I was thinking, okay, if I can't fix him, what we could do to make his life like those young adults' lives that we see in the US.
But even the decision to go to the conference at all, or even do the reading, I'll put myself in this position again, and I might just resign myself to this is what it is. I had to take care of him for the rest of my life. I might study to leave too, just run for the hills, But you take a different approach to it. You do a deep dive.
Total different. I told my wife to leave. She wanted to kill me, right? But your woman go through 9 months and have a child. I said, listen, just leave that child with me. You could go and marry somebody else and have a perfect baby. And that didn't go down very well.
I would imagine.
But I didn't think about it running away because I was still thinking, as I caused this, I had to fix it. Kind of thing. That was just my mentality. I caused this, I had to fix it. And so when I came back from that conference, I tried to engage with other people, other parents. And I'm telling them, I always tell people, coming back, I was like Robinson, Christopher Columbus, and telling everybody, the world is not flat.
Yeah, it's a new world.
Keep sailing, if we keep sailing, that's how I felt telling people, listen, our children could go to school, they could be educated, they could get jobs, they could live independently, and everybody watching me like, Glenn finally loses, finally trip off. Our children have Down syndrome.
Get the best of him.
Yeah.
So at that time, locally, you have a lot of networks, like you're in touch with a lot of parents who would be dealing with the same thing and that kind of thing. You have any place where you could go, like, similar to the conference?
No, it didn't have. And that's why in trying to get in touch with people, and never forget this, Dr. Natalie Dick, a developmental specialist at Mount Hope. She sent out an invite, and I'm not sure if she was doing research, if she was working on some paper or something back then, and requesting parents of children with disabilities to come to her office, and she was interviewing us. And every time I went, I would take the names of everybody who was there. So when I went the second time, I met different people. And when the third time, I met different people. And I just started contacting them and staying in touch with them. And
network.
Yeah. And that's how I finally met like about 5 other parents. And I say, hey, we could do what they're doing in the States. Because a lot of the organizations in the US are formed by parents.
Right.
So I said, well, hey, we could do that. Let's come together and form. So we banded about, just as I said, to what we'll call it. Say, well, it's about Down syndrome.
Right.
So we'll say Down syndrome. And we throw around different names until we came up with the family. And we say it's all about the families coming together and working together for their kids. So Down Syndrome Family Network. And that was in 2011. So we registered it in August 2011. And then everything like it hit the bricks, right? Yeah. Because every time we planning, okay, let's launch it. I had a different vision in mind, for the launch. I was like, if we launching this, at that time Hyatt was brand new, just came to Trinidad. I said, if we launching this, had to be at the Hyatt or the Hilton.
And they watch me the vision, you see what
they watch me like if I'm a madman. I say, we had to launch, we had to make an impact from the get-go. I say we can't launch in no school and no back room. So we can't do that, So of course the launch didn't happen. And then in September, United Nations proclaimed the 21st of March as World Down Syndrome Day. Because the 21st chromosome that splits 3 ways. So they use the 21st of March. And the first time it would have been celebrated would have been the 21st of March 2012.
All right. So you're done mobilizing.
So we say, right, we'll launch it on that day. So it will commemorate to the anniversary of World Down Syndrome Day every year. And we got it to come off.
Oh, that's good.
And that was the word. And we launched at the Hyatt.
Oh, good. Congrats again.
We launched at the Hyatt. The president was there, Dr. Richard. So that was
beautiful.
Perfect.
Beautiful.
Yeah, that was perfect.
Like, with some of these things you're saying, the song's surreal, because again, you're wondering if you get that news from a doctor, and that's it. You're talking about an international organization who's sending a package. There's no local support like that. You find out that from your doctor, and then you're on your own. You deal with your anger. There's no support.
Yeah. They had at the time they had the National Association for Down Syndrome based in St. Anne's. So of course, when I heard about it, I got excited. Because I'm thinking it's something like the organizations I'm in touch with internationally.
Oh, by that time you're already in touch with them.
Yeah.
Okay, I understand.
But because I couldn't find anything locally,
of course,
until somebody told me about it. So I went to visit them, but it wasn't what I thought it would be. It was just like a school. And I'm sitting and I'm looking at the kids here, and I'm saying, nah, this is not going to create the future that I've seen when I went to our conference, because we only have persons with disabilities in one area, and they have nothing to learn from, nobody to emulate, because all of them have disabilities. So all they will do is learn different traits from each other. So
you think it feeds into the kind of outcast mentality we have towards those things in our society?
Yeah, well, it definitely does, because that is how the society thinks, right? When you're different, that's it. You're literally on the outside, you don't fit in. So, and that's exactly what they do, along with, of course, the compassion and the sympathy that people feel for you when, you have a child with a disability.
And they feel sorry for you.
Yeah. Literally sorry for you. They pity you. And of course, as I said, I was just, so if my friends, they probably meant well, but coming and telling me that they're so sorry that my son was born with Down syndrome. I said, he doesn't have cancer.
Yeah, it's not like a loss.
Yeah, it's not a disease. Some would say, gosh, boy, sorry, your son's suffering with Down syndrome. He's not suffering. It's a condition, a genetic condition. It's not a disease. And I keep telling people that over and over. But they were just like me, ignorant. They don't know. Some people right now don't know the difference between Down syndrome and autism.
Yeah, I'm one. Like, I read a lot about it, and my wife is a school teacher. So through some of her training is where I start understanding some of these things or some of the differences. But there's no, well, definitely not teaching it in the school system. There's no sensitization to it. Not in my time. I guess now, youths know different. They are the answers to all these. Any issue, I feel youths have a better chance than us. But
yeah,
there's no
they have a
sensitization.
computer in their hands. It's just that some of them don't know how to use it properly.
Well, I would assume that too, yeah. So it's almost like that outcasting perpetuated. It'll go on and on.
Yeah.
But that drive you found to build it, you were doing advocacy or anything like that before. Everything is brand new to you here.
Everything was brand new to me. Even when I formed the network and, we sit down and, who will be chairman? And everybody's looking around. Now, the kind of person that is always, as I say, I'm a fixer. But I was always a behind the scenes fixer.
Right.
Never up front.
Yeah.
I'm never up front in anything. You know, that was from since, as I said, you know, going to school and you know, never being at the forefront of everything. So I will work behind the scenes. I'll make you look real good.
Right.
Nobody needs to know it was me. But I want to see an effect.
Right.
So, you know, so I'm pinpointing everybody as this 1 or 2 degrees, this one I think it should be you, it should be you. Now all of them are women, you know, and I was the only man on the board. So everybody said no, they don't want to be. So I had to be the one. I had to be chairman. So no, there's me angry again. You know, why I was pushed into the forefront, you know, to have to do this. But then again, I guess it's because, you know, as I say, we really think we're in control of our path, you know, and we could do whatever we want to believe we're in control, but somehow like we really not in control, you know, because when I think back on how everything happened and what took me to the point of starting the network and where the network is now, is almost like it was destiny. You know, because when I think back, if I didn't start the network, what would be happening now with regard to lobbying for the human rights of persons with disabilities and the calls for legislation and things like that? What would have been happening?
Yeah.
Because it wasn't happening.
Yeah, and you're not sure if anybody else would have step up. Is really
exactly. So it's almost like it was destiny, but it was a difficult journey. I'd say, you know, talking about it now, and I always feel that we still not doing enough.
Yeah.
You know, even with everything that's being done now, even with we have people employed, we have people in schools and things like that. You know, it's almost like but we still just barely scratching the surface.
Of course.
Because the average person still thinks that persons with Down syndrome or disabilities have no value.
Yeah, and should be cast aside. I think if I was to say that the general idea here, for people who are not experiencing it, or for people who might have a child or a family member and don't know what it is, avoidance is a strategy, I feel.
Yeah. They think it's a good thing, you know, to put them in a box, you know, and regardless of how pretty the box is, because according to the area where the box is built, you know, some of them are very nice.
Yeah.
But the whole thing is it's still a box.
I understand.
They are still segregated from society.
I like what you say too in terms of the diversity in a school helps. In other words, if I have people from different religious backgrounds, different races, different education levels, you don't know where my inspiration could come from or who I could take example from or who could be my friend. And the fact that we try to diversify them out means that they have it's limited if you're only along like people. So it's a real disadvantage to society. And I do like what you say as well. We may not see it. When I say we, I mean myself too. May not see it as, okay, this is a group that could contribute, or individual that could contribute. We don't see it that way.
Yeah. We don't. We see them as, in some instances, we see them as almost as a threat. I guess, like how I was thinking, you know, we can't fix them. What do we do with them?
Yeah, of course.
You know, we don't want people to see them. A lot of families break up. You know, the father blaming the mother blaming the father. This come from your side of the family. You know, so it's either the mother leaves or the fathers leave. Most of the time, the fathers leave. So you have a lot of single mothers, you know, with children with disabilities. We have instances where families cut the mother off because she refused to drop the child off by Lady Ho-Choi or one of the other places, or just leave it in the hospital and come home. Yeah, they cut them off. You know, so tell you, when you hear some of these stories, it's crazy. And then when I go, I've been to several of the conferences, and when I go to these conferences and I'm hanging out, like literally going to a bar and liming with young adults with Down syndrome. I mean, when do you think that was ever happening in Trinidad? He doesn't want to come back home, but he must want to just stay there. You know? And everybody used to say, well, why do carry Tyrese abroad? And I used to say, well, Why?
Mm-hmm.
When we could fix here.
Of course.
That
But Tyrese
could be
goes to
here.
the conferences with you, so he has experience as well.
When I can afford it,
Sure.
definitely take him. So he's more popular than I am.
I would imagine.
Yeah, so when I go now, they'll be like, "Where's Tyrese?" I say, well, "Hi, Glenn." You know, especially the girls.
Yeah.
The girls go crazy, over him.
Yeah, he fit like a fiddle if people was to see him.
Yeah, the girls go crazy over him. Unfortunately, he gets spoiled.
Yeah,
because when he became a teenager, and we went to a conference. Where was that conference? Indianapolis.
right.
Yeah, we went to a conference in Indianapolis. And what they do, as I say, is a very large conference. On the Friday night, they have a dance party.
Right.
And on the Saturday night, they have a gala banquet.
Oh, nice.
With a dance after, right? So, from the Friday night, this was his first experience as an adult. And for a conference of that nature, they have a lot of volunteers. So they have all these university students and college students volunteering for the conference. So, you have all these girls who do not have Down syndrome. And the difference is, when they volunteer at the dance party, it is a big dance party where everybody including the parents, exactly.
Oh, nice.
Including parents fit in. So the parents will be off on one side, and all the young people are on the dance floor. Well, some parents will be in groups on the dance floor too, but not with their children, right? And so he had a ball dancing with these university students. And
of course,
afterwards, I remember we were going to a restaurant for dinner. And when he was passing, there was a guy walking with about 5 girls. They were going to Lime. And they said, "Yes, Tyrese." And all the girls started to call out to him, Tyrese. Listen,
guy.
He's 26 now. And he will say, "They want me that. Tyrese,
damn right,
Tyrese." He never forgot that experience.
Of course.
So afterwards, when we go back, he's only looking to dance with those university and college students, right? Even though the girls with Down syndrome want to come and dance with him now. He has, unfortunately, become a Down syndrome snob.
Right.
Yeah.
You're saying this, Walter.
He broke my heart, I'm telling you. He broke my heart. I ready to set him up, because I was thinking, if he get married, he'll move to the US.
Yeah.
And
you have other plans.
He have other plans.
Tyrese like what Tyrese like. I like him already.
Yeah, boy. And that's it. I can't tell him who to like, right?
Of course. Of course.
But one of the parents I met, the first conference I went to, well, her daughter, inclusive educational system in the US because of all the laws and policies that they have. So she went to junior, went to high school. When she graduated from high school, see if you could guess what she got as a present, her graduation present from high school at 17 years old.
At 17? I can tell you what I would have wanted. I looking for a car, I looking for a ride.
That's exactly what she got.
Oh, she did?
A brand new car. And this is a young 17-year-old woman with Down syndrome. When you think that'll happen in Trinidad?
Yeah, boy, oh God, but that's exactly what I'm thinking. I don't know.
So she went to college after she went to Clemson College. And the thing is, everybody, when I hear people, I have a lot of friends who are teachers, right? And, they talk about the fact that, those children they can't survive in the school because look what's going on with the bullies. And they are like, fix it. That's another easy fix. Fix it. There's more work for the teachers.
Of course.
You have one teacher teaching a class with almost 40 students. Fix it. When you look at the models that a lot of the other developing countries are using at the top of the chain in the educational system, they no longer use that one teacher to 40-something students. They're no longer teaching a classroom only.
Yeah.
It's a lot of changes have been made. And now they have the universal design for learning, where they teach students according to how the students learn, and you don't try to force the students to learn how you teach.
Yeah.
So we still have this archaic system that we haven't changed. I mean, this educational system, we use that whole theater style teaching for over 100 years.
Yeah, time to change it.
There you go.
Yeah, you're right. It's not only a disadvantage to people with disability. I think it's a disadvantage to every student, every teacher, every business that had a hire students who come out of that school system. I don't know when we will get to that point.
And then everybody thinks that, okay, we want to put our children in the school and we would cause their children to regress.
That's what people think.
Yeah. People, there are some parents who got their children into like preschools and parents took their children out. When they came and they saw a child with Down syndrome in the preschool. They took their child out. It's almost like if they feel, what, my child will catch Down syndrome.
Yeah. Trinidad's a place like that still. People think like that. Like I had an experience. I want to say it would have been Newtown Boys at the time. And they had done maybe it might have been on the cricket team or the zonal cricket team or something like that. And they brought some children from Lady Ho-Choy home. Is it Lady Ho-Choy? Yeah, and they brought them and they paired us. Everybody was paired with somebody who had Down syndrome. But at that time, everything was Down syndrome. I never heard the term autism then at all.
Yeah.
And I'll never forget the experience of the boy, a little fellow named Larry. And it stuck out in my mind because there was a Larry Constantine stand there. And they as a little child then, you're playing cricket, whatever we did with the day, we did with our buddy. We had a paired partner. And I felt so much better for the experience. Having just heard him talk and see that, he had the same dreams, he laugh at the same jokes. At that time, you feel like, it's almost like we are the outcast because you're thinking that this person is not, again, contributing to society. They're not normal, quote unquote. So I don't see where people might feel that their children wouldn't benefit from being around people who are different from them. It could only augur well for them. Yeah. I understand the limitations of the schools. The limitations of the school system go well beyond disability. It's just our school system is not the greatest.
We're in a mess. We're in a mess.
Yeah.
And it will take somebody with a very, very strong will to want to make that change.
You might be that person with a strong will because everything you're saying so far, whether it's that anger or just your drive to learn more, to try to do something different is admirable. I know the legislation is something that you're working or you're advocating for now. When you first started in network, what was your main goal then? What did you want to see change in Trinidad when you all first came together?
Well, the first thing was education. Because I saw the difference of the main reason that the persons with Down syndrome in the US and in Canada and in the UK and thing was so advanced is because they all have an inclusive educational system.
Right.
So you say, okay, well, all we had to do is get them in schools. That was not as easy as we thought it would have been.
Tough task, right?
Yeah, that was a really, really tough task. So I say, okay, they don't want our children in school. But what we have to do is change the legislation and fix things because, the same excuses that they gave me when I was trying to get my son into a school, say, like 22 years ago, is the same excuses they are using now. 22 years later.
So much things could change in 22 years.
Exactly. 22 years later and you're telling me the same thing. Teachers not trained, the facility is not accessible, this, that, the same excuses. So we have not progressed at all.
So teachers now with UTT and all that, I know they had teachers college might be the main thing then, which kind of was absorbed into UTT. And again, my wife went through that program, but it seems to be now that on her syllabus, she had some training about how to deal with children that would have been different. Is it advancing there at all in terms of the teachers' training?
It has advanced. Because UTT has a bachelor's in special ed and UE has a master's in special ed.
I see. Okay, good.
But it has made absolutely no difference.
Yeah, because I guess the structure of the school has changed.
All those cohorts that have been graduating are back into the regular school system. So they have made no impact on getting persons with disabilities into that system. So they have all this training and they're not using it. What do I say about intelligence if you use it? It's a waste of time. Without action, without action, it's fruitless. You have all this know-how, but you're doing nothing about it.
Yeah.
So knowledge isn't power. It's the use of knowledge, right? And I would tease all my friends with that. I said, just pull down that masters off the wall because you're doing nothing with it. You're wasting time.
Yeah.
What are you going to do it for? And I will ask them that.
Right.
And challenge them because they make no sense. Your masters in special ed to do what?
Yeah.
Write papers on what? I mean, you have no impact on the educational system. Are you trying to change it at all?
Right.
Are you writing to the minister, writing to service commission? Are you putting forward any new ideas on how we could fix this? Because with some of the groups that we interact with, we have the Down Syndrome International. I mean, they Inclusion International, right? If anyone Googles them, they go all over the world incorporating inclusive practices in schools, in the workplaces, and things like that, right? To show that it could work.
Yeah.
And yet we keep making excuses here why it can't work.
Yeah.
So you see why I tell you I'm always solutions oriented, but we have a lot of people here who are very educated, have a whole set of letters before their names and after their names, and all they're good for is to keep coming up with excuses.
Yeah. Why it can't happen.
Why it can't happen.
You see, some of the things I find in our society is systemic a lot of times, to me is you talk to individuals, you have these conversations, even some people you might say who's in the university studying this thing, and you all might be aligned in terms of what the outcome needs to be. You're taking a different approach to it, and they may be, because spreading the knowledge or the awareness is important too, but I don't know, boy. Some of our systems so rigid. I want to blame capitalism. I don't want to blame again or slavery or how we come here. But our systems, they're so sticky and they're so rigid. It's like
one of my friends would have been glad to hear you say that. He's very much into African history and African culture. He's very, very well researched.
Right.
And he blames everything on the US and capitalism.
Yeah. But they seem to have it. There's the heart of capitalism. There's no more market economy than them, but they still seem to find ways to advance things. It's almost like they're not married to some of these things. The school system will change. It changes all the time, whereas we still, like when I talk to Calypsonians, for instance, it hurts me that more Calypso is not taught in school as literary devices. Why I learn Macbeth for? I can't understand none of that. When we have writers and poets here that are doing great, great work. So I don't know why that systemic thing is. I don't know.
So it's almost as you say, not only capitalism, but also colonialism.
Yeah, colonialism, exactly.
That's still stuck in us, where this is how it was, this is how it always will be.
Especially in education, because it's beating into, this is a square peg and the wrong whole thing, but we'd rather shave off the edges of that square peg.
Yeah, because look at this. I went to Naprima College in South, right? So one of the prestige schools.
Right.
My friends went to junior sec, right? Quite a few of them are millionaires out in Texas and Nigeria. Because they went to junior sec. Back then, junior sec was an actual vocational school.
Right.
They had brand new equipment, lathes and all the other mechanical. So they did like mechanical engineering, electrical engineering, and things. So when they came out, they went into the engineering sector, and of course, eventually they migrated. Right. And my sister, she went to a junior sec and then a senior sec. And she's in the US. She's a speech and language pathologist. Some other girls, one of them is a doctor in the US, one is a nurse in England, and they went to junior sec. And then all of a sudden, junior sec became the bottom of the barrel.
Yeah, it's going to be the same thing where they say they're sorry for you. They're glad for you passing up, you pass for junior sec. Sorry to hear that.
They're sorry to hear that, and whereas it should have been the other way around. So now, as I said, according to Universal Design for Learning, you're forcing everybody to do academics. So what about the people who are technically inclined?
Yeah, or sports or music or arts,
there's no opportunity for them. Where they would have been, you send them to a place where they could learn a vocational, do vocational courses instead, and they would have been way better off in trying to teach them the academics, and then when they go UE, then they have to start doing the practical. Or when they start an internship, which is madness.
Yeah.
When they could have been doing that practical from the time they were 11 or 12. like how it was in,
Of
in the
course.
junior sec.
You said something to me that it stood out and it's so relevant to this, where we don't want these systems and the society to adjust to us enough, you know what I mean? We want us to conform to what the society ought to be. When we are the society, what is the society without these people? Yeah.
We are society. You know, everybody say when they want something to be fixed, well, the government or this one to blame or that one to blame. We are the ones to blame because we are the ones who sit around and do nothing. We are causing it.
Of course.
We are the ones watching people with disabilities being discriminated against all the time and doing nothing about it until it happens to us.
Yeah, you can't know until you know. You know, the thing about it is if the society not sensitized to it, and that's why I was so shocked when you tell me there's no support group, there's no, for at a societal level then. But you're saying from a legislation standpoint that the Ministry of Social Development is where legislation will fall to make changes for people with disabilities.
And they actually did. They actually have drafted legislation. Finally, after all the years since inception, since 2012, we are lobbying for this.
Right.
We got the government back in 2015 before they changed to ratify the United Nations Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities.
Right.
So that was a huge plus, because after that, countries are mandated to put certain things in place for persons with disabilities. And one of them, of course, would be legislation, which will affect, education, healthcare, and all the things that housing, employment, everything.
So it's broad.
It's broad because it is to support, empower, and protect persons with disabilities.
So how did your advocacy change from just Down syndrome to disabilities in general?
No, as when they asked me before on how we could see, the only way we see we could make any changes is to lobby for legislation. So we can't lobby for legislation for persons with Down syndrome alone.
I see.
Yeah, so it have to be for everybody.
I see.
And it was interesting that all the other groups, I mean, well, we of course we partner with all the other groups, but their voices were not as loud, for legislation.
Right.
And I was saying, to me, that was the only way forward. Things to change, because we cannot continue being just charity-based.
Right.
So I had to depend on your goodwill. Right? If you fail to put in a ramp in your new building, you pay it in. Otherwise, you could open a restaurant and have stairs.
But this is one of the things that was so shocking to me, because when you said there's no legislation, because draft legislation is still not legislation yet. It is a step in the right direction, but we still don't have legislation. I was hearing anything in government buildings about things like putting ramps and making it accessible to people in wheelchair or people who might be visually impaired and so on. And I kind of assume it was law. No. But it's not.
Yeah, it's not law. So it's still, the government cannot force anybody to do it unless it's put into law. So like the National Policy for Persons with Disabilities is a guide.
Right.
Bureau of Standards has a building code manual where it tells you all the correct sizes for the doors, stairwells, things like that, elevators, make it accessible for persons with disabilities, make it accessible for everybody, persons who are visually impaired, physically, challenged. Everything is in place, but there's no legislation to say I have to follow that building code.
Yeah, like even when I was building my house, right? There's the building inspector in the regional corporation. You have to go there to get your plans approved, number one. And then you have to stick to the plans when you're going to build the house, and then they must give you final approval for that.
For the completion certificate, everything.
It's all about walls, it's all about paint, it's all about this and drainage and all those types of things. But it wasn't until I was telling you I had an Achilles injury. And, now you're down. You had to do surgery and you're down for 6 weeks. For the first maybe week or two, you're in what do they call it? A splint. So you're not in the boot, you can't walk. And when I have a flat house. And I thinking, okay, I build a flat house, that's good, you know what I mean? It's all about people as they get older, they walking up and down stairs get harder. I think I'm good to go. It's only when I come home in the crutches the first day, I realize I have a step up from my garage to the house that is high. And then another step up to go to the bedroom area, because it looked nice. It was a nice thing when you was building the house. It made the thing look separate from. And boy, listen, the kind of tiles we use and them step up, it was a hazard every time I had to, because at some point my wife going back to work, I home alone. And I remember one time trying to warm some food, right? And now I'm on crutches. And I buy the microwave. And I can't figure out how to reach from the microwave back to sit down. I just stand right by the microwave and eat. So you're saying there's nothing that tells people from an infrastructure standpoint, okay, this is what you build your house to code in case of anything or nothing like that. We don't have that.
Yeah, we don't have that. So it's really just...
It's goodwill of people.
Just goodwill. And you see, that has to change. So a lot of people still say, oh, we don't need legislation. We just need more awareness. We've been pushing awareness for the last almost 90 years. If they could go and ask the current president of Blind Welfare or the chairman of PAVI, persons with visual impairment, go and ask them about that. They've been around for a very, very, very long time. And ask them all the awareness things that they're doing, and nothing has changed.
Right.
And people even talk about that. Where you have people who are visually impaired, they are sound engineers, they're doing all kind of jobs, literally all kind of jobs, as opposed to just weaving baskets. Before, when I was growing up, that's all
that's all you see do, for blind welfare,
right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But now they're doing all kind of jobs. I actually worked when I was working at in Ministry of Social Development. There were two young women who were with visual impairments, and they were doing the same job I was doing. They had an app that would talk to them, so they have their headphones in their ears, and they're doing the same research and everything and developing the same papers.
Yeah.
It's because it could be done.
Mm-hmm.
But what's the difference? Getting the opportunity, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they were lucky they were able to go to school to get that opportunity. But when you're unable to get into the school in the first place, so
you're starting out on minus.
You cannot be educated, therefore it cannot be integrated or it cannot be included.
Mm-hmm.
So you're not getting a job. You're cut off.
Yeah.
Literally cut off from society. So,
and we're cutting off whole families too, because it means that you then as a parent, you have somebody who dependent for their whole life.
Their life or your life. And now, children with disabilities living longer than the parents. So,
of course.
For your entire life until you die.
Yeah.
You take care of them. The first time my son told me, of course, at this age, I have issues. I had a very active lifestyle. After I learned how to do everything else that my father didn't let me do, right? I was very, very active. So, now his back issues, knee issues, all kind of things. So sometimes when I'm watching television and I get up and I stretch, Tyrese watch me and say, I'll take care of you, Dad. I was like, damn, there we go.
Mm-hmm.
Because when I used to be thinking that I have to take care,
of course,
for the rest of his life, for the rest of my life, to hear him say that, I say, yeah, I'm doing a good job.
Yeah, but as a parent, it might be so easy to say, just coddle, just do everything for you have somebody who you have to raise and just take care of them. So how important is it for you to see him get that independence and do some of the things you would have seen being done in the conference?
Yeah, because it's thanks to the conference. Because I used to do that.
Right. It started off like that.
Yeah, because you don't know any better. As far as you're concerned, everybody's saying it. When you have people, right, who, as I said, have all these letters before the names and after the names, and they're telling you, he might never talk, he might never walk, he might never do this, he might never do that.
Yeah, that's gospel.
Exactly. They know better than me, right? They are educated. They have a lot of academic experience plus work experience in their fields.
Right.
So I listen to them. But then, at time as we were going out, so I went to help him take the shower. I put out clothes, and I'm going to put the clothes on him. Every time I put on the t-shirt, he pull it off. I'm like, yo, you gotta go now.
Yeah.
Put on this t-shirt. No, pull it off. I'm like, what's going on with this boy? And he took up another t-shirt. This one, Daddy, this one. No, I put that back in the drawer, close the drawer, blam. Pick up the one I wanted to put on him, and he took it off again and started to throw a tantrum. I didn't tell his mother, you deal with that, yes?
Yeah.
And she just leave him let him put on the t-shirt. Now, the t-shirt he wanted to put on was matching the pants, was matching the outfit.
He do better than you.
Yeah, and it's then afterwards I started to understand he could make choices. And we start allowing him a little more rein to make choices. When you go to shower, I do just like what my mother used to: wash here, wash there. This is the rag, show him how to put soap on it. Wash here, important parts out. We're playing, the shower is not a place to dance and splash up water. And he learned how to do it. The best calling part was when I went to one of the conferences, I saw this guy walking with his daughter in a stroller. And she had a phone in her hand and she was playing a game. So I watched him pass. And I asked him, I said, what kind of phone your daughter have there? He said, an iPhone. I said, an iPhone? I'm like, how old is she? 3 years old. I said, but that's her phone. Because, the phone, what is, young people call it a bejeweled. Okay?
Yeah.
You think that more rhinestones than, than one of Dolly Parton's dress. So he said, yeah, that, she had her phone a long time. And he pulled out his iPhone from his pocket, handed it to her. She rested on her phone, went into his phone, find the app, because I know all of my phones connected on some cloud or whatever, and she continue playing the same game she was playing. And when I study all the times where Tyrese pick up my phone, put that down. That's not a toy. Do not touch the phone. That come down with like a ton of bricks. I was like, what the hell, this man 3-year-old daughter have a smartphone? So for any time I come back, I buy a phone for him. And how old was he then? I think he was probably about 10 or something. He never had to change a screen on his phone.
Yeah, that must be what I was worried about.
I can't tell you how many screens, how many phones I've had. He's probably on his on his 3rd phone. I am probably on my what, boy?
The number up there.
Yeah, the number up there. I'm feeling embarrassed to say. I pull our phone out of my pocket.
We all in the same boat.
Yeah, boy. And I still look at that. I could count how many, when he's doing dishes, I could count how many glasses or plates cups he's ever broken.
We should label ourselves as special. We call them special.
Exactly. When I think about how much glasses and plates and things I broke as an adult,
of course.
Not even as a child. I don't want to go back as a child, but as an adult,
of course.
And he has not. So I was telling him, well, you washing all the ways from now on.
Yeah, ain't bad. That's not bad at all. So you feel like parents do the children a disservice by taking over for them and not giving them their independence?
Yeah, a major disservice because, and what I was trying to tell them, you see, they think it's easy, right? Like I used to think it would have been easy for me to give him a shower and dress him, right? But in the long run, I'm making things harder for myself. Because the sooner I made him independent, things got easier for me. And that's why I keep trying to tell the parents, they would keep saying that, oh, Glenn, you don't understand. My son not like Tyrese. I said, no, I do understand. You're not like me.
I see.
Because you're not prepared to do what I would do at all. Because, as I said, this is the same thing, They look for the easy way out. You want to help them so much, and you don't understand. You're not helping them. You're hindering their progress. You stopping them from actually learning and developing different skills because you want to do everything for them.
Yeah, like it's the same with my son. My son is 12 now, and I remember the first time he always. He grew up, it's just 3 of us, right? So you don't have any siblings or anybody in the house. So you're taking pattern from adults and what they do. And one time he decided, they go on and thing and he wants to make ramen or he wants to make eggs or something he must see on YouTube. And listen, the first time this man went in that kitchen, it was mayhem. And I had to kind of calm myself down and get a little patience on my wife. And I said, listen, it ain't go always be so. He now learning to do it. He go have a little thing. I'll give him the guidance. Come, my first instinct is the same thing you say. I want to shout and say, don't come back in this kitchen again. But no, I see that man get up on a morning. Before I get up, he done wake up. He set his alarm. He wake up. He make his breakfast. He organize everything. So most mornings to wake up, he's come and said, Dad, there we go. He don't like to reach nowhere late. So he said, Dad, let me move. If you leave home by about 6:45, he in school by 7 o'clock, he good. To the point where the other morning he tell me, because he was ready and I now go and make coffee. He said, Dad, show me how to make your coffee. I could do that for you, so we could leave here by 6:45, you know?
I like how you think.
He said, yeah, let me do it, because I realize you have a problem leaving here by 7:00, you know? So I wonder how different it really is, because you have to go through that period as a parent where you let them go, they make the mistakes, they make the mess, as they say, in the bathroom. And it's more a role of function of guidance and getting them to the point. Because you can't know where you know, you'll just get better over time. Is
Exactly.
he saying it?
And even with Tyrese, no, we let him do a lot of things, but, you know, we still, that fear factor by the stove.
Right,
you
right.
know? So one morning, my wife Carol hearing some noises in the kitchen. So she get up. Next thing I still lying down here, open the bed. Next thing I hear, Tyrese! What? So I jump up and fly outside. The noise she was hearing was Tyrese was making breakfast. He already fried the eggs. So imagine the stove is already off, but the frying pan was still on the hot stove, so it was just sizzling.
I see.
Right? He had the butter, the cheese outside. He sliced the cheese already. So all things, you know, we done. Now we'll cut this cheese for you because we are afraid for him with the knife.
Right.
He sliced the cheese already, and the noise you heard was him trying to toast the bread.
Right.
But the toaster wasn't plugged in.
I
So
see.
you know, every time he pressed it, it fly back up, and he started to get vexed. So he press it on and it fly back up. So that is the noise that woke us up. So he had already turned on the stove, fried the eggs, turn it off.
Yeah, boy.
And we didn't even know.
Mm-hmm.
So he say, you see that? We'll show him how to do it.
Of course.
So he won't do it on his own like that.
Mm-hmm.
Another time I was out in the yard doing some work, and I'd started doing laundry, and I left it to go on our dogs. I left it to go and see about the dogs, and my goodly son come and put soap and started the machine.
Mm-hmm.
He put about half a bucket of skip.
A little thing had to be cleaned.
Yeah, so it's a good thing it was skip and not breeze. Otherwise,
it suds up your whole house.
Yeah. You know, so I was just like, I had to take out everything and wash it out, but I can't get vexed with him.
Of
so
course,
we start showing him how to do it.
Mm-hmm.
So you see, it was a learning process for us, you know, because we still thinking he wouldn't be able to do it.
Yeah, it's our fears, it's really projection, you know.
It is, as we tell parents now, we put our preconceived limits on the kids. So even all those people, the academics and the people with all the experience, all the therapists, they still have their preconceived limits on what persons with disabilities can or cannot do.
Of course, all of us,
and it still stops them from going any further. You know, even as a coach, right? You'll hear all trains of thoughts about how much weight people should lift, you know, if they are getting older or what. One of my clients was coming up to her 60th birthday, and she wanted to lose weight, get fit, all the things. I said, well, those are not really measurable goals, you know, because it's how much weight you want to lose.
Right.
You want to be fit enough to do what? Run up a flight of stairs or run a marathon or run a 5K. You know, so you had to know exactly what you want to do. And we started working together, and at her 60th birthday, people couldn't recognize her. Her sons were both international footballers at the time, playing for different clubs.
Right.
And when she sent them a video of her leg pressing 16 45-pound plates.
Oh, wow. Yeah, it's impressive.
Yeah. One of them,
Mommy,
what are you doing? Why give you so much weight to push? For 10 reps. Now, she didn't start off like that.
Right.
She started off with not one weight on the leg press.
Of course.
But the whole thing is, and she never lifted weights before, but the whole thing is removing limits.
Right.
And of course, with guides, you know, so you're doing the right thing. You start off slow, you warm up, and you just keep going.
Right.
But the whole thing is removing those limits.
Of course.
Because I I cannot look at you and say what you can or cannot do.
Mm-hmm.
I can't do that, but yet we do that with people with disabilities all the time.
Yeah.
You know, we just watch them and, okay, that's it. Can't be employed here, can't go to school here, can't do this, can't do that. And we don't know. Everybody with a disability is different.
Yeah, that's the other thing too. Like the whole discussion about a spectrum, again, which was a word I didn't know at all back in the day. People, even with the same disability or the same condition, it's different variables. Like I was telling you about a lady I read about by the name of Temple Grandin. She's on the autistic spectrum, but she's industrial engineer. She does a lot of design, so she's also into animals. So what she did was she was able to look at the way cows were being slaughtered and realize that, listen, all this stressing out the animals too much. You could do this in a much more humane way that keeps the animals less stressed, which would lead to better milk, better dairy, better beef, for instance. And she redesigned the whole system. And the point that she was trying to make is that her ability to see things that the people who we call normal thinking people wouldn't be able to see, because she said, I could see what the cow's seeing. So she's the same thing you're saying, she said all these academics who've read and all that, well, that's a form of intelligence, but we mustn't limit intelligence to that. So she's a huge advocate for people who are on the spectrum or any disability really to join the working world. And she keeps saying, yes, if they join the working world, you're going to have accommodations for them. We have to adjust. So a big part of her work is, she might be 70-something now, but her life's work is to help people like myself adjust to how we think about people or see people differently, so that we respect the different types of minds that we have. And just where you start off, to contribute to society, So you think it's something that we could work towards in Trinidad? Boy, I feel like we're so far from it when you talk about it. Yeah.
That's the thing. We are far from it, but it's not impossible, and it will not take as long as we think.
Right.
I remember in one of our earlier discussions that you mentioned, not reinventing the wheel, right? So even with working towards the disability legislation, we have so many developing countries. Dr. Paul Richards at our conference this year, the Hyatt for World Down Syndrome Day, he actually called out a list of all the countries that have disability legislation. It was a very long list.
But we're not on this.
Yeah, we're definitely not on it, right? We have even Barbados signed their legislation earlier this year.
Right.
But the whole thing is, we don't have to reinvent the wheel. And we don't have to dumb things down either, because that's another thing we do very well, right?
Mm-hmm.
We'll take part of this from here, part of this from here, but we'll leave out this part because we don't need this.
Mm-hmm.
But it comes like, the Bible, it's in chronological order. If you take out a segment, it will make sense.
Make sense. Yeah.
Exactly. And that's why, we end up on the wrong side of the law a lot of times, and those defense lawyers make a lot of money.
Of course.
Because they leave
enough gaps.
Things
Maybe that's why there's leave the gaps.
Probably. Right?
Mm.
So I remember having this conversation with a very strong advocate back in the day. And they were telling me that, we can't just look at their legislation. They have worked over 50 years, to get their legislation, their legislative agenda to this point. And we need to go through that same teething process. I look at them and say, well, you ought to be crazy. I do have 50 years.
Yeah, just copy.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I say, what, you mad, or in 50 years I'll be dead.
Mm.
I don't have all that time to waste. And you see, that's what people keep saying. I mean, since I started the network, first people tell me, don't start the network, it won't make sense. Because the government doesn't care, society doesn't care, so it doesn't make any sense doing that and advocating. I still start the network. Don't try to move towards the legislation. We still got the UNCRPD ratified. We still got the National Policy on Persons with Disabilities amended. And now we're pushing towards finally getting legislation.
Right.
And to show how it will benefit persons with disabilities and literally change their future, and even benefit us as the rest of society.
Mm-hmm.
We really need to move away from that charity model of looking at people with disabilities to the more social model of accepting them as part of society instead of leaving them on the outside.
Of course.
Because once we continue leaving them on the outside, society doesn't know them, they don't know society. So they'll never be apart.
Yeah, we're not putting ourselves in a position to benefit from them at all.
At all, because one of our catchphrases, opportunities reveal potential. So that's said, I can't say what you could do or cannot do, but the whole thing is, I'll give you an opportunity to try. If I don't let you try, how I'll know? So it's the opportunity that will reveal your potential. And through that system, we started our mentorship program, with corporate TNT. And through that, we have young adults with Down syndrome gainfully employed. Some of them who did not go to an inclusive school, but given the opportunity to work, they learned what they had to do. And they're able to function. We see a lot of well, now you see a lot more now because of social media. But back in the day, the only people you'll see with Down syndrome working, and like in the movies and thing, from the US, you'll show them stand up by a door hugging people, going in, and so their job is a hugger. Right? They had a television show, not born. Well, they're not born this way with this group of young adults. That was an Emmy-winning show. But not that one. They had another one where they were depicting the life of a couple with Down syndrome. But that was the worst thing that I saw to myself, because one, they weren't living independently. They were living in an annex of one of the parents' home. And the mother would come in and wake them up in the morning and give them breakfast and get them ready for work. And then when they go to work, one of them, her job was to, put stamps on the envelopes. And they were sitting on the floor, putting stamps like a 12-year, not a 12-year, like a 6-year-old.
Yeah.
So I'm like,
perpetuating that dependency thing.
Exactly.
Of course.
This is an adult. And when I look at where my son was working for aeropost.com, and he was functioning just like one of the other employees.
Right.
When I saw what he was doing, I actually went to Aeropost, and I stood up in the manager's office.
Skybox people?
Yeah. I stood up in the manager's office, and he said, "Look what will happen." And I say, a little alarm went off. I see him jump up from his seat. He go on a little chip of paper popped up in a small machine. He grabbed the chip of paper and he went down into the warehouse. So the manager told me, "Come with me." So I watching. So he's walking with this little chip of paper and looking at the shelf, and then he stopped. He took a package off the shelf. He scanned it, and then he walked to the exit from the warehouse to the front end, scanned it again, and took it to the front, for whichever customer came to pick it up. And then he came back in. So, of course, I'm thinking the piece of paper have row 7,
right,
aisle 5, shelf, whatever number, or thing like that. The piece of paper is a barcode.
I see.
I'm like, so how you know where to go? But he learned how to do it.
Of course.
He learned for it to come off the shelf, you had to scan it off the shelf. And then for it to leave the warehouse, you had to scan it again. So when you check the records, you can see, okay, it left the shelf at this time, it left the warehouse at this time.
Makes sense.
Accountability. And I didn't even think that he was been doing that.
Well, imagine if you all didn't make the sacrifices to teach him to do these things home. He would not be much of he can't function in our working space. So
exactly.
It's so important. And you were telling me as well that you have one child with Down syndrome who is doing SCA recently. So who are your possibility again to secondary school?
Yeah, so we're waiting to see what will happen. Okay. We had one, Rochelle last year. She did SCA and she went to a serval. So she was always at 9 years old, she started her own cupcake business.
Yeah.
Rochelle Sweet Treats.
Oh, nice.
So that's still going well. So she's doing that at serval, continuing with the cooking and making, of course, going into other menus. So she's doing very, very well.
Yeah.
So Pedro now, we are waiting to see what the results will say, with him. It was a fight to get him into school. It was a real challenge with Rochelle as well. Her mom had to go and sit in the school with her because they didn't provide the student aid as supposed to.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah. And
Yeah,
same
the
thing with
systems-
Pedro.
Mhm.
Yeah, so
Same thing.
the system is flawed,
Of
you know,
course,
when you think about it. And as I said, it's the same excuses they give when my son was going to school.
But I like the spirit you have, Glenn, because I don't like when people say, okay, they 50 years advanced. At one point, there was 0. So we want to push back the 0. You know, it's like we don't want to start with day 1 at all, ever in anything.
Yeah,
Start somewhere.
yeah, we don't
Everything
have to.
flawed. Everything flawed. When you start, it's flawed.
Yeah.
And you fix it as you
And we
go
just,
along.
yeah, we just fix it.
Yeah,
and
you do.
it is easy fixes,
Mhm.
but you have to want to fix it. You
Yeah,
see,
yeah.
we have at the this was so interesting. This analogy, right?
Mhm.
I was on a course with some Caribbean counterparts. So there are 2 Jamaican guys on the course.
Mhm.
And one time, you know, Trinidadians, we get them Picong.
Mhm.
They want to fight all of us. I mean, like over 60 something of us, and they want to fight all of us. So they said that, oh, we are toy soldiers.
Mm.
We had a coup.
All the Trinis?
Yeah.
Oh.
we had a coup and we kill nobody. You know, we are toy. It all happened in Jamaica. All of them dead. 100 and something were dead.
Mm.
You know, and then one of them went on to say why we are toy soldiers.
Mm.
He said during the slave trade, you know, when the ships coming down selling slaves, they start with Haiti,
Yeah, the drop
and then
off up
Jamaica,
north.
yeah, and then they're coming down. So the last person on the chain, Trinidad and Tobago,
They're peaceful.
we get all these sick, lazy, weak slaves. Listen, so I'm listening to him saying this, and you know, we getting angry.
Mm-hmm.
But when I do something, I think about it. Where's the first slave revolution?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the most.
Yeah. And up to now, them Haitians can't get together.
Yeah.
Because there's all the warlike tribes
Yeah.
that from different tribes there.
Of course, yeah.
And then Jamaica.
Mhm.
And then coming down.
Mm-hmm.
And when we look at our mentality,
Yeah,
man,
I
they could
think
do
it's laid back,
Trinidadians anything.
easy.
Yeah. They could do us anything.
Yeah.
And once they stop the fete,
Well, yeah, once Carnival coming back every year, yeah, is that something to celebrate? Is that something to
yeah,
celebrate?
so I couldn't get vexed with them.
Yeah.
I couldn't get vexed with
I
them.
understand.
I was like, damn, but we could fix this.
Yeah, I think so. Like, even as you say with Rochelle with the cupcake business, through the same podcast, I met Temple Grandin. There was a man and his son. I believe his son had Down syndrome as well. And he was doing socks. They started making, they had a sock business, and the boy would deliver them for himself. He said once it's in a certain radius, he wants to deliver them himself and that kind of thing. So it's not the limits, as you said, we put on people. So you were telling me as well that in terms of the 21st of March and the idea of socks and so on, that was something you would have advocated for because it's become very, very popular in Trinidad now.
Yeah, well, we Down Syndrome International started that in the UK.
Right.
And even when for the 21st of March for our conference, we always bring down a very accomplished self-advocate with Down syndrome, just to show parents, hey, this is where your child could be. Once you keep them back, once you stop treating them special, and once you teach and empower them, this is where they could be, right? Because people always feel, oh, that could happen in the US, that could happen in the UK, that can't happen here. It could happen here, and we have all the examples. You know, my son is working, and he doesn't have all the verbal skill. He could speak, he'll understand, but he could follow directions, he could follow instructions. But we have Kelly working permanently employed at Scotiabank. You know, we have Surya working at Hyatt Regency. You know, Lisa Sawyer used to work at Hyatt Regency as well. Danielle, you know, she was at Udicott.
Right.
You know, so we are getting the opportunities from corporate TNT because they are partnering with us, and they are seeing that, hey, they could actually function.
Of course, add value.
Yeah, they could actually function. And everybody talks about when Christy was the first young woman with Down syndrome to get an OJT contract. You know, it offset the Prime Minister Gender and Youth.
Right.
And they said she was the life of the office. Because she's very quick with her, Dana.
Nice.
Very sharp tongue.
Yeah.
You know, so she used to have everybody going
Very Trinidad.
in the office. And say, look at that. All of that is bestowed because these people were not given that opportunity. They didn't even get to go to an inclusive school. So if they did get the opportunity to go to an inclusive school, what would have happened?
Yeah, it would be leaps and bounds ahead.
ahead, as well as the people, as you mentioned before, because everybody feels, we just want to get our children in school, so there's no benefit for the other students. But the other students getting to learn them, getting to learn about them.
And you learn about yourself, Glenn. You learn about yourself. You start to understand your own patience, your own tolerance, your own, as you said, imagine you being angry about other parents who taking a lot for granted. Imagine what a little child could see if my son was to be around, somebody who's differently able or any kind of disability. He could start to see, hey, this lazy style I have doing this.
Exactly.
Or I don't want to stay up late to do this. Look what this man doing. Look what this little girl doing. He might see himself differently, but boy, as a society, you think legislation is going to make that change? You think legislation? We as a country, we famous for passing law and doing nothing after. You think legislation gets us there?
That's why I have 2 attorneys on my board.
Right.
See, that's the difference.
Oh, so once you get in law, you active.
Oh, thank you. Once we get that, we'll be very active.
Right.
Yeah, because the whole thing, as I said, it is an easy fix, but we don't want to fix it.
Yeah.
If we don't want to fix it, it will never fix, and we'll just continue making excuses.
Yeah. Well, one of the things I always look at with the politics too is that we have a recent change of government, and if you have draft legislation, then I believe it's Bandana Mohita's social development now as well before, and we have a tendency that when we come in place, I have some friends on some boards, all of them fired now because you have a new government. So the idea is to scrap everything the last government do and start afresh. So you're ready to deal with all that when you go back in, you partner with the ministries, and I guess you got to deal with whoever in power.
Yeah, we've already written to them.
Oh, nice.
Trying to set up meetings, and we're hoping that they don't try to reinvent the wheel.
Right.
We're hoping. We have about 3 different existing drafts for that legislation, and it's up to them. They could take it from there instead of starting from scratch, and actually be the ones to make a difference in the lives of persons with disabilities.
Of course, and once you I'm confident that you will get it done. We have to hold our governments, or what you're going to call political parties, to account. It should be like a relay. But we treat it like a set of different 100 meters rather than a relay. Everybody want to go back to the start line.
Yeah.
It's something else to see.
And we keep setting back the country.
Literally. Of course. We can't get to the 50 years if we never start. And the idea that we're doing something for a group of people with disabilities is also something that when I was talking to you, shedding light on the fact that any one of us could have to deal with that tomorrow. Life does change. All kinds of different things happen. I was telling you about, I have a little sister who 2 years ago got in a car accident that was fatal for 2 people. And she spent a long time in hospital and a long time in recovery. I was seeing her just this weekend. She's going through physical therapy and everything. Thank God she could walk with a lot of help. Now she's learning. And I saw her with a coloring book. She told me she's doing occupational therapy. And it makes you realize that it's not some distant group of people. It could be anybody. Yeah,
it literally could be anybody. There's this police officer, I can't remember his name, but he lost his vision. I think he was in his 30s, and compared to the other person who was bitter and angry, he's very instrumental now in helping people with visual impairment, even people who have been blind since birth, to use assistive devices. They could consult with him on which are the best brands, which are the best software and everything.
Right.
And that's incredible.
Of course.
Those are the things that we want to hear. Not throw your hands up in the air and wave it like you just don't care. Or the woe is me, or we just hug one another and sit around and sing Kumbaya. We have to save our society, and it's all of us have to do it. We can't just continue to just sit back and do nothing.
Yeah. And even when the way you put in it that you live past a certain age, all of us gonna deal with them issues.
Yeah, by dealing with it now. If you give me something to read now, I don't have my glasses, so I'll be.
In any other country, I'm legally blind to. If I take off my contact, I don't know you're still there. I can't see nothing, And that's why Tyrese said you go take care of you're in good hands.
Exactly.
But I wonder how much, as you say, changing the society, because when we do get to that age, and we've not built homes that could accommodate a wheelchair, or doesn't have a ramp, or all the doorways too small, or like I say, a step up, and or you tell them to like build these massive houses with all the bedrooms upstairs.
Oh yeah, I had a lot of friends that, as they get older, they have to sell their homes. The dream home, you build a nice dream home, 5 bedrooms upstairs, a half a bathroom downstairs. So anything happen to you, you don't even have not 1 bedroom downstairs. So all of them starting to get older now, and they can't negotiate the stairs.
No.
And now the stairs are nice and pretty, so you can't put in a sliding chair because it wasn't designed for that. So you see, that is not in people's minds at all, that we're going to get older.
Yeah.
And we wouldn't be able to do that. So all of them had to sell their home and move into a flat home.
Of course.
And even when they have to renovate that home, to make it suitable.
Yeah, you had to renovate it, you had to do something, build a bathroom downstairs. We many times, or even sometimes, we get to the point where you have to take care of your parents. There's a lot that you have to adjust. So that's why I say I trust what we're saying in terms of legislation, because again, going back to that corporation telling me to put drainage, if I did not put drainage in my house because drainage must cost me extra 50,000, I would not put it. And then I would be causing a hazard to myself and to my community. Same thing I was telling you from a business standpoint. If OSHA will come in and say we have certain things to do, and it's left up to me, as you say, goodwill or charity, I might just not do it as an additional cost to me as a business. Like our one office we have, I would not know at all. The railing is it's dangerous. It's just too low. It looked nice and it have a railing, but it's just too low. A man lean over, that's his problem. So thank God they have a OSHA that come and they see it, because who feels it knows. We've had people who've been damaged on our work sites. We have had people who passed away while working with us. So until you deal with that, when you know starting off a business, you might not understand why that legislation is important. So I feel like if the legislation is there that helps me protect myself from myself. So build a house one time where wheelchairs could go, because you could end up there. You don't know what tomorrow brings.
You really don't know. And the whole thing is we are our brother's keeper. We've become very selfish, self-centered. It's amazing. I used to see that before. When I'm in the office and parents would come in with their children in the morning, drop off their bags before they go to take them to school. And they would just drag them through the office. And the parents are saying good morning, the children are saying good morning. I was like, there's no way I could enter any building, any taxi, any office, anywhere with my mother and not say good morning. That happened. The next day is my head flying forward with one cloud.
Yeah.
But yet we have that now. You see people walking into the buildings. If you'll walk in and tell somebody good morning and they look at you like,
people don't answer.
Why are you telling me good morning?
Of course.
Because they don't care about anybody. They only care about themselves.
Yeah.
And that is what we have to change that in society. But it has to start in the home. Because if parents not teaching their children that, and this is across the board. This is not only people would say. In fact, sometimes it's even better in the low income homes, than in the high and middle income homes.
Gotcha.
It's actually better. Where there are some parents still teaching their kids manners and things like that.
Yeah.
But everything really starts in the home. So even with the empowerment of persons with disabilities, it has to start in the home. And parents have to do better. I always tell them you're going to die. So all this protection where you protecting your child, what is going to happen when you die? Then you just leave them up to the wolves because you didn't even try to teach them some martial arts, some good touch, bad touch. You didn't do anything.
Or basics. You can't cook for yourself. What happens?
So then you just leave them. You're protecting them from everybody. And if anything happens to you, they are an adult.
Yeah, the mercy of everybody.
They are the mercy of everyone. And that's another part that we have not factored in, right? And that's why our study legislation is to support, empower, but also protect persons with disabilities. A lot of the existing legislation, around the world, they have different penalties if a crime is committed against a person with a disability.
I see.
There'll be
different layer of protection.
Yeah, the penalties are over 100% more, because that person is vulnerable.
Of course.
They can't protect themselves. And you taking advantage of them. So the penalties are different as opposed to if the crime was committed against you, right? And those are the things that we need here. When you hear how many persons with disabilities, young women, were taken advantage of by family members, by strangers,
yeah, I guess
by
you hear all those
neighbors.
stories.
Yeah, and those stories do come out in the newspaper because the family keeps it,
of course,
hush. Because whoever the uncle is or whoever the brother is or the cousin, things like that. So these young children suffer at this relative, suffer at this neighbor who the mother is trusting to look after them because she can't stay home. As you said, she can't stay away from work all the time. And just tell the neighbor, go just watch my daughter, cerebral palsy. Not knowing the neighbor taking advantage of the daughter every time she leaves.
Yeah.
She only found out at the time when she got back early.
Of course, yeah.
And caught them.
Oh.
So who is protecting them?
And yeah, the measure of a society is how you treat your most vulnerable. To me, that's what it is. And if nobody protecting them, then we're in some trouble. Trouble. Again, I want to personally thank you because the work you're doing, I appreciate the level of detail you're going into it. I mean, you're in a situation or trust into a situation that I think most men or parents would say, hey, this is some of the worst news you could get, and you've taken it and chosen to use it to help a lot of people at this level of the household. Well, first the individual themselves, the parents and the household, the societies, the businesses, and I appreciate the work they're doing. It will bear fruit. It's already bearing fruit. And I think I trust when you say that when the legislation passes, you will stick behind them because you've been doing it with all the legislation.
Yeah, we have to. And I think that once the rest of society starts to step up and see how important this is, because persons with disabilities is the largest minority group because it's across all sectors.
Of course.
All. As they say, it's about this like this disability don't discriminate.
Yeah, of course. We see it. And as you say, who feels it knows. When you put in it, you went and learn about it. So I feel like the only way for us to advance is really for all of us to feel it. It's just one society. And if we continue to treat any part of the society as hush-hush or outcast or not have the conversation, the thing that starts with conversation. So that's why, again, when you ask me, how I decided national impact, and I want to invite you to keep this as a running conversation. This space always open for you because I would love for us to come back here and talk one day and say, boy, all the legislation passed, this change, everybody in schools, the teachers well prepped, the buildings are in place, the corporate world knows what it is and so on. And I'm always looking for, I want updates on Tyrese now too. You said he's at Detour now, is he okay?
Yes, he's at Detour now. I hope he get promoted because Mola was killing him.
Yeah.
He got accustomed to when he wasn't working because after Aeropost,
right?
That the pandemic, and
then slow down.
He got COVID, so he was out of it for a while. So he got accustomed to being at home, playing games, watching movies,
the good life,
watching Netflix, watching sports. And you're sure, right? The good life. So he'll stay up until late in the night because then he could wake up late the next day, make his own breakfast, do his own thing. But now he's a working man again. So sometimes I'm sleeping, I'm hearing the television on, get up and, he's fast asleep.
Yeah.
The television is on because he can't stay up how he used to.
Yeah, man, working hard.
Yeah, because he's working hard during the day, So the real transition. So I'm hoping he eventually gets promoted and go to some 8 to 4 or something.
Yeah, well, that's good, man. Continue to do what you're doing, and as I say, there's an open space. But I'd ask you before you go, about where funding is concerned. You were saying that you don't get government subventions now. So in terms of funding your efforts, how are you doing that?
Well, we actually approach corporate TNT and the government of Trinidad and Tobago, to fund. We are the board is completely, we're all volunteers, so we don't get paid. Right. So everything that we get goes into the work that the network does.
Okay, good.
We don't have any staff that we pay. Well, besides like the accountant and
of course, you gotta pay them.
Right? They give us a good discount.
Right. Yeah.
But
So anybody interested in things like that in terms of contributing can reach out to you across all your socials, right?
Yes, we can. Yeah. And then it's not only financial contribution because a lot of people feel, for any time they hear you have an NGO, they feel just
Money.
running at them, your palm out, right? We also need like technical support and even volunteers, and for you to just go our pages, comment on our posts, like the post, share it, or tell us what you think we could do better and come and help us do it. Because a lot of people come with ideas, right? But we want people to help us implement the ideas there because we have a lot of ideas too.
Yeah.
But we don't have the hands to be able to. And there are a lot of very skilled people, as I said. It's amazing the quality of people we have in Trinidad and Tobago right now, right? Over the years. Since we were just completely all the assistance we gotten with regard to tertiary education. So we have so many more people, with bachelors and masters and PhDs, and yet society is in a worse off position than it was years ago.
Sometimes it's too much brains, not enough hands.
There you go.
So just give me your socials again one more time before you go.
So Down Syndrome Family Network, DS Family Network on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn.
Okay, good.
Yes, LinkedIn as well, TikTok,
yeah.
and TikTok. So look for us. You can also Google me, Glen Niles. We are also on YouTube. Yeah,
right, yeah.
I forget. And we are looking to push it a little further, getting more younger hands on board help us with that whole social media push.
Well, what I'll do, once I do the description, I'll include all your handles and everything there. So anybody who wants to get in contact with Glen on the network could get in contact. But thanks, bro. I appreciate you coming on.
Thank you very much.
All right.